For February 22nd, 2012. I want to welcome everybody here tonight. I was on vacation during the last meeting, and I thought everybody was here because I was back, but I found out that it's because we've got some other proposal coming along. So thank you for attending and giving us your attention. We appreciate that. The first item of business is the call to order. Jackie?
Here. Here.
Here. Here. Here.
Here. Commissioner Tchaikovsky. Here. Commissioner Carpenter. Here. Commissioner Stoughton.
Here.
Commissioner Fisher.
Here.
Chair Grable.
Here. Thank you. Next item of business is the approval of the meeting agenda. You all have a copy of the agenda. Are there any corrections or additions to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move to the next item, approval of the consent agenda. First item is the minutes of the regular meeting of the Planning Commission for February 8th, 2012. What is your pleasure as to the minutes of the last meeting? Commissioner Fisher?
I'll move approval of the minutes.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Any other comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll abstain. Mr. Chair, I was not present.
Very good. The minutes are approved. Next item is community comment. Community comment is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on items that are coming before or are not coming before the Commission this evening, are not on the agenda, and which are not scheduled for future consideration. So if there's any member of the public that would like to address the Planning Commission on some item of community concern, we would be happy to entertain your comments. Okay, thank you. Hearing none, we will move on. The next item is public hearings. There are a couple of items for public hearings, or at least the Grandview District Development Framework public hearing is this evening. We will take testimony from staff members. We will hear from the task force. We will then hear from interested members of the community who wish to comment on this proposal. What we're going to do then when the public hearing is closed is bring the matter back up here to the Commission for comment and discussion, and then based upon the comments from the public that are heard this evening, the task force will take those matters back into consideration, and then we will and consider anything that they might want to do with respect to those comments. Then the matter will come back before the Planning Commission in a later meeting for Commission action to recommend or not recommend the task force report to the City Council. So, having said that, I just want to make everybody aware of what we're going to do. We are going to take public comment tonight. We want to hear what you have to say. I will give you the admonition that I give to every public hearing, that a good comment is not made better by reason of the fact that it's repeated 5 times. So just be respectful of everybody's time. We want to hear what you have to say, and we want to hear all points of view. So we will conduct the public hearing in that spirit. With that, we will move to the presentation of the Grandview District Development Framework. Commissioner Stoughton has been working with that task force, and as I understand it, will be making the initial presentation.
Of the Commission, fellow members of the Commission. It's odd to be out here speaking to you during this meeting, but pleased to be able to do it. And I'm here with Mike Fisher and with Chris Rothedal, who are also members of the steering committee, are going to assist me this evening with the presentation. I'd also like to take a minute just at the beginning of this presentation to recognize the members of the steering committee. We have a 52-member steering committee that has, as you will discover as we go through the presentation, put in hours and hours of volunteer time on this matter. And so I'd like to publicly thank them and ask that those members of the steering committee that are here this evening could stand for a minute just to be recognized. Come on, don't be shy. So we have a very good turnout from our steering committee, and I know there's a couple of members on the steering committee on the Planning Commission as well. So I want to thank all those folks. The other folks that I would like to recognize is a couple of representatives from our consulting team. And this was a team of 5 consulting experts who assisted us in putting together the development framework that's before you tonight. And so I want to introduce Mike Lamb and Bruce Jacobson from the Cunningham Group. They led a team of consultants who were just absolutely indispensable in helping us put this whole project together. And then last but not least, I want to recognize Carrie Teague, Jackie Hugnacher, Chris Acker, and others on the planning staff who were, as the steering committee members know, enormously patient with us, especially when our meetings after 9 o'clock would then degenerate into conversation for the next hour as they were waiting to close the doors and lock up. So thanks very much to them. And then finally, some of you will see Griff Wigley around here taking some pictures and documenting what's been happening. Griff has been terrific in putting together a website called Edina Citizen Engagement, which has really been a terrific way for us to both document what's been happening as well as to facilitate comment among members of the public and notice to members of the public. So with those remarks, let me just begin the presentation. And I want to start on this slide, this opening slide, because one of the things that I have realized as I've gone through this is that those of us around the steering committee are very familiar with this area. But when we make this presentation to people who haven't looked at this before, it's a little hard to decipher what we're talking about. So just to orient people from the beginning, this picture is a picture really of the Grandview District. And this arc across the top is Vernon Avenue. Across the bottom is Eden Avenue. Highway 100 goes north-south. These are the OLG baseball fields here, softball fields, and this is the rail line, the Dan Patch rail line that goes through. This is where Interlochen turns off. The Holiday Station is right there. Grandview Tire and Auto there. Down here you have the Super America and the BP station. Over here is City Hall. And then down here you've got the library and the Grandview Square complex. The Public Works building is right in here. This is the Blockbuster and Devani's area up here. So it's a good way, I think, for people to kind of orient themselves as to the area that we're talking about. So let me start just with an overview of what we're going to be talking about. 4 things I really want to go through in the presentation. First is about the Grandview District. There's some characteristics about it that are really important to understand before you can be thinking about what the future of that district ought to look like. Second is describing really the process, and this has been what we think is a really new way of thinking about community engagement and thinking about community leadership in a redevelopment process. I'm going to then transition and ask Mike Fisher to go through kind of a description of what we envision and then return to talk a little bit about what happens next. So when we talk about the district, it is approximately 37 acres and 18 parcels within those boundaries that we talked about. Over a third of the property in the district is publicly owned, and this is one of the things that distinguishes it from many other things that we on the Planning Commission deal with, where we are influencing change entirely through regulation. Here we have some direct control through public ownership of a lot of the land in the area. It's home to the City Hall, as I mentioned, and the police station on one end, and the library and the senior center on the other end. The Edina Public Schools bus garage is located within the district, and the public works site that is now vacated is also within the district. As those folks who live in the area know, this is a true neighborhood commercial center. Those of us, I live in the Highlands neighborhood, so I'm not far from here, but this is just a small list of the things that are commercial services and goods that everyone who lives in the area uses on a regular basis. I know I'm up there every day patronizing at least one of these businesses. The other characteristic about it is it's really a kind of a crossroads. It's a neighborhood center, but it has regional connections. So if you take a look at the map here, you really have Vernon Avenue, which is going to go south. Once upon a time was Highway 169, and it was the way that you went from the Twin Cities down to Mankato. You've got Interlochen, which is going to take you up to St. Louis Park and Hopkins. Highway 100, obviously, north and south. And then there's the rail line. If you take Vernon across 100, you get to 50th Street, and you're over to 50th and France. So it's a key place for regional connections. The process that we're engaged in right now was really triggered when the old Public Works building was vacated. I pointed it out earlier, it's about a 3.5-acre parcel, and for years the city was looking for a new home for the Public Works site and was able to do that in, I think, 2010, opening a new location on the south side of Edina, and that left a vacant piece of property that really triggered our work on this process. In 2008, the comprehensive plan was amended by the City Council, and the comprehensive plan identifies a number of areas around the city that, as you and the Planning Commission know, are identified as potential areas of change. And the Grandview District is one of those potential areas of change. When they identified that, one of the things that the comprehensive plan indicates is that if there is going to be a major redevelopment or rezoning in one of these areas of potential change, that there needs to be a small area planning process that's engaged in prior to that happening. And so in December of 2009, anticipating, this was before the Public Works building was abandoned, some of us on the Planning Commission at that time anticipated that we were going to need to go through some kind of a planning process. We approached the City Council and requested permission to proceed with a process we called a small area guide process. It was an interesting process for a variety of reasons. It was very compressed, and it was very community-led. So in April and May of 2010, we held 10 meetings in 20 days, legendarily referred to now by members of the steering committee, the 10 meetings in 20 days. And there were 28 community members who were part of that. It included area business and property owners, and it also included a design team. So 18 members were made up of a community advisory team, and what was unusual about the way we composed that team was that half of the members were kind of designated in advance. We had property and business owners, we had representatives from the Planning Commission, the Park Board, et cetera. But we left open the balance of the community advisory team and made the decisions on how to populate the balance at the kickoff meeting. So we invited folks to come. We actually had almost a caucus-style meeting in this very room where we said to people from various geographic quadrants of the city, you meet in this corner, you meet in this corner, you meet in that corner. Asked people to select a representative to sit on the community advisory team. At the end of those meetings, everybody came back and they had a representative, and a couple said, we have a question. We want 2 people. Can we have 2 people? And instead of making that decision for them, we as a group decided, do we want 2 people or don't we? We decided to, and so that's how we came up with this 18-member group. And I think it's important to talk about it because it's a real hallmark of how this process has been community-led and grassroots from the beginning. The design team was similarly populated with folks who live in Edina, who are in the design field, who are design professionals, led by Michael Schroeder from the Planning Commission, all volunteering their time to help us with crafting a design out of this process. In December of 2010, we delivered a report to the City Council and asked for its adoption and approval, and the City Council, in fact, adopted the Grandview District Guide Process report that came out of that compressed process. That report really created, the major piece of that report created 7 guiding principles, and I've listed them here, and I'll just quickly kind of sketch over these. First was to leverage publicly owned parcels and the civic presence. Second was to enhance the economic viability as a neighborhood center with regional connections. Third, we wanted to turn the barriers that you see, the Highway 100, the railroad tracks, the roads, into opportunities rather than seeing them as barriers. Fourth was to pursue logical increments of change. Gone are the days when you can just kind of clear an entire area and rebuild it. And we recognize that we have to do this kind of parcel by parcel, and that's a little more complex and takes a little more thought, but important for us to recognize. Fifth was to organize parking as an effective resource. We had an interesting business member who came to us during the guide process and said, you know, I have a business and it's the package store, the UPS store, and he said, you know, it's really important for me to have parking right outside my window because sometimes I have customers who come up with a 40, 50-pound package. They're wrestling to get it out of their car, and I can run out and help them. If I have a central ramp that somebody has to walk 100 yards to get to my business, it's not going to work for me. On the other end, there were people who recognized that if we're going to have places that people are going to come and stay at, that they're going to need some centralized parking. And so we have to recognize both of those things as we proceed with parking. Sixth was to improve movement within and access to the district and to preserve opportunities created by the rail corridor. This whole notion of movement within and access to the district was really something we heard over and over from people both in the guide process and subsequently in the small area plan process, that folks don't feel safe as pedestrians or cyclists moving around in this area. And in the second meeting of the guide process, we actually tried to take a on-foot tour, and those who were with us on that know that that illustrated how unfriendly the area is to pedestrians and how important it is as we think about the future to make that more friendly. And then finally, we wanted to create an identity and a sense of place and incorporate natural spaces into a sustainable development. Edina is famous for cutting-edge, innovative ideas, whether it be Southdale or Centennial Lakes. We've always done things that have been kind of the next big thing, and we want to aim high and do that in this situation as well. So after the guide process and the 7 guiding principles were accepted, we moved into a second phase of the process, and that's the one that is really coming to a conclusion here this month and next month, and that we're here to talk about tonight. In March of 2011, the City Council approved this process, and the goal, again, was to have a community-led group of people create a small area plan. We started the process in April of 2011, and as I mentioned, it's been led by a steering committee of 52 members, and 9 of those members were selected by the steering committee to serve as an executive committee, meeting between meetings to kind of set the agenda and chart the day-to-day course. Again, this included a broad base of residents, but also business and property owners. Jerry's Foods, UPS Store, Patisserie Margot, et cetera, were all represented in this process. As I mentioned at the beginning when I introduced Mike and Bruce, we were assisted by a team of consulting experts. And the unusual thing about this was that this consulting team was assembled by the steering committee, this was not something where a city staff sent out a request for proposal and then hired a consulting team to then assist us. We actually spent last summer quite a bit of time on the executive committee. We started by sending out a simple request for letters of interest. It was a short document. We just said we want to hear who you are, what ideas you have for innovation, and how you might be able to help us. We got about, I think, 15 proposals back. We sifted through those, and we interviewed 9 teams. And we did one of the interesting things we did, and although Bruce and Mike are on the work with the same firm now, at the time they were with 2 different firms. And we said to folks that we are not going to be afraid to split apart teams that came to us and assemble the team that we think is right to help us. And so we actually selected Mike and Bruce to work together, even though they were with different firms. And obviously they liked working together so much that they decided to join up. And we've had to put up with the barbs back and forth ever since. So it was really a new way that, again, is consistent with this community-led idea that we've really been trying to make a hallmark of this process. Since April, and really since we assembled the consulting team in August, there's literally been hundreds of hours of volunteer time. There were 15 steering committee meetings through the course of this process, 18 executive committee meetings. Obviously, the time that we spent doing the consulting interviews, and then we also did 3 community workshops. There was extensive communications outreach, and I'm going to have Chris Rothedal kind of give you an overview of the efforts we made to reach out to the public to engage them in this process. We did focus groups with residents, went out and tried to identify people of all kinds of different demographic backgrounds and interests to try to get as good a sense we could of what the needs were and what people were looking for in this area. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Chris Rothedal and ask him to kind of describe to you the communications efforts that we went through during this process, which were, again, creative and relatively extensive.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Chris Rothedal, and I'm on the executive committee. I started out as a member from the Heritage Preservation Board, and then as time went on and we really determined that this communications effort was going to be super important, integral part of the process, I morphed into kind of a communications role with very little communications background, but I had a lot of fun doing it. Some things to point out up front. Kevin, we had a grant all along. We had a $100,000 Livable Cities grant from the Met Council, and we used that primarily with our consultants and so forth. So we didn't have budget for communication. So essentially, we did not apply any of our grant money towards communication. We decided to leverage free when at all possible. We used, obviously, the city staff, Jennifer Bennerat's team, and experts that kind of help us with this. We used them a lot. We had a lot of volunteers along the way that helped drop things off, get information out. We attempted all kinds of new ideas with communication. The citizen engagement website was a big part of that. And we took ideas along the way of how we could get the word out. So as the process unfolded, it was amazing the people that would come and say, hey, can you come and do this? Could you come and speak to Rotary? Could you come and try this? So we took a lot of input along the way and tried to continue that process. What I will tell you is that no process is perfect. What we learned is that you can try, it seems like, thousands of different things, and you're still never going to get to every last person about your effort, but I think we did a pretty good job considering the budget that we had. Just to give you a sense of some of the things that we did did numerous press releases for the different milestone events that took place when we hired our consultants, when we had our focus groups, our workshops. To date, information on Grandview has appeared in all three major publications, the Edina Sun, Patch, and also the Star Tribune. At the time, we had a city website that was fairly archaic, so we brought that up to date with all the information so that people could access information on there. We also had a great opportunity at the Edina Citizen Engagement website. So I'm sure if you haven't heard of this is a website where a lot of public input, a lot of opportunities to blog, a lot of opportunities to really track the process of a development process has been developed on this website. And so we took the opportunity to be, I think, one of the first major projects on there. And if you go back now in time, it's interesting to look on that website and look at all the logging in that's been done between the blogging and the events that we took place and all the things to track. We also learned how to blog. I mean, Kevin, he's come a long way with his blogging, and we all have. And it's been a great resource to really capture public comment. City Extra, email chains, Facebook, we even tweeted, I guess you'd call it. We did a lot of interaction with our boards and commissions. We have members on our team. We kept the boards and commissions updated. We had members from the school board. Last summer, we sent our intern around, and she walked the entire district, handing out flyers, getting to know the businesses, collecting contact information. We have posters up at 85 locations, about town articles, stuffers. We did a big thing at Edina Night to Unite last August to get, especially the neighborhoods that are kind of in conjunction to the Grandview area. We've been on Channel 16. We had a webinar event. So we did a lot of unique things. We had great coordination with the Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota Do Town campaign. So we've had a lot of things along the way to help get the word out and so forth. These are just examples of some of the press releases that we put out that Jennifer's team wrote on behalf of our group. Some examples of some of the posters that we did, the liquor store stuffers, the utility bill stuffers. We did a webinar, which was pretty crazy, to put 6 of us isolated in our own homes, and we got onto a webinar with residents. We had half a dozen or 10 that showed up that evening for the webinar, which was really cool. We had a Jerry's display. In fact, our Jerry's display was so awesome that we got in trouble. Jerry's called us about 3 days into it and said, people can't stand that they can't see through that center door. So we had to go back and actually modify our Jerry's display. But for 2 weeks in 2011, we had this display up, and then we're going to have it again in about 2 more weeks right before the city council. So we had a great partnership with Jerry's to help get the word out. As I mentioned, we've mentioned over and over, the Edina Citizen Engagement blog has been a great asset for us. We have all of our meetings, all of our milestone events, our presentations have all been logged onto there. We've been able to correspond with the public on there. We have numerous comments, which at the end, Michael will mention as far as some of the major themes coming in. But the Citizen Engagement website has been probably the most, the best tool that we've had to really interact with the citizens. And that's my piece. I'll bring up Michael.
All right, well, that concludes our presentation for the night. And, so what I'm going to talk about is what we envision. And it's a little nerve-wracking, actually, because we've got 52 people on the steering committee that work very hard on what we envision. We've got a consulting team that work very hard. And I'm not going to cover everything. So if there's some pet item that I'm not mentioning, you can just yell or something. So what I want to do real quickly, you're looking at an image right now, and I'm going to try to move through this relatively quickly, but just point out landmarks so we know where we are. So this is a bird's eye view, kind of hovering a little bit over maybe Perkins. Looking west, here's Highway 100 and Eden Avenue. Probably not a lot that you recognize there. And I think one thing we should make clear is this is a 30-year vision. This is not all going to happen next year. It's going to happen incrementally. And a lot of times people tend to look at particular areas and go, hey, what about this business that's there today? Another thing we should make clear is there's no intention to come in and force somebody to relocate their business. And I'm going to talk about this theme a lot in the next few minutes about creating a public realm that actually incentivizes the private landowners to want to make changes to their properties. So you make the public investment and the private will follow. So in summary, we want to create a place with a unique identity. We want to rethink and reorganize the transportation infrastructure. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. We're going to leverage these public resources to make incremental value-creating changes. And we're going to enhance that public realm to encourage the private development, as I just said. So if we look at this in a plan view, just to orient everyone, here we are in City Hall. This is where it all started, the Public Works site. The school bus garage site, Jerry's. We're going to talk about a number of different elements. Trying to remember what the actual next one is. Okay, so what you're going to see in a minute here is from right about where the cursor is, looking in this direction back towards the Public Works site. And we're also going to be looking at a pedestrian crossing of Highway 100. So we want to create a place with unique identity. One of the key parts of this design is the Central Commons, which happens to be located on the Public Works site. This is this entire block here. But it's an idea of a community facility and community space, outdoor space, plaza-type space that people will gather. When I get back to the plan, I think Kevin talked about a go-to and a stay kind of component of this. This area is really designed to have the types of businesses along Vernon that are really focused on, you drive in, you can park, you can go in, do your business. But the other component, the other area of the development area is really more of a pedestrian-oriented feeling. It's not that you can't be driving over here, but it's really about wanting to stay, to spend more time. So this is a concept of a community facility. We don't know everything that's going to be in this community facility. That's going to be part of the next stage is we as a community need to figure out what that means, what would be in that type of building, what type of things would be programmed in the outdoor space, a lot of mixed-use development around it. Over here, you can see a concept for a crossing of Highway 100. Let me go back just one slide again. So again, the commons here, this pedestrian zone and crossing 100. One of the hallmarks of this plan is really pedestrians and bicyclists being able to move through and around the area. Another very important element of this plan is connectivity. How do we bring, this is a neighborhood center, and yet it's really, one thing we all learned is it's almost impossible for the neighbors to get here without getting in a car like the rest of the region would. And so what we're trying to do is make sure we're making little poking into the neighborhood in all sides so you can get here on foot and by bicycle. Part of this being a unique identity is to be cutting edge and sustainable. And I won't spend a lot of time on this, but just overall thinking about the development here from the infrastructure to the buildings being highly sustainable. Rethinking and reorganizing the transportation infrastructure. When I showed you earlier Vernon Avenue, we just had a living streets, a couple days of talking about living streets in our community. This is an ideal example of we can rethink Vernon Avenue and take it from its transition from being a highway to being a local city street again by right-sizing it, by having bike lanes, by having sidewalks, by having safe ways to cross Vernon. We do not have to have it acting like a highway as it comes through this area. And also the Grandview crossing, as I pointed out earlier, the bridge over here crossing 100. And we're actually, I'm going to show you in a second, we're creating a few new street connections. Use this illustration, so the plan on the left, so here's Vernon, where I talked about rethinking, redesigning Vernon. There's also a connection, this is the library right here. This is Jerry's up here. So one of the ideas is from Grandview Square right now to get up to Jerry's is not a pleasant walk. I'm not sure you would want to do that of your own free will. And where the bus garage is now, imagine these big yellow buses hanging out all over the place and over the edge of the property line. In the future, with some redevelopment here, the idea is to create a pedestrian way all the way up past Jerry's. So that's another one of the items we talked about. And here's a bird's eye view looking at that as just an illustration of what it might look like. Again, kind of hovering probably over the library looking northeast. This would be Jerry's right here. One other thing I want to note is, so part of the original concept was, if this is the library, is this idea of creating a front lawn to the library, so bringing the library to Vernon, connecting the two. Right now the library is sort of set back. You can't really appreciate it as you're coming along Vernon. And the concept was to, get this mouse here, to actually close Sherwood up here and add parking in front of the library and then bring Sherwood out on 53rd here. And we talked about the outreach, and we thought, we try as much as we can to get out, but through the blog, we actually started hearing from residents in the Richmond Hills neighborhood, which is back down in this area. And their concern was, do we really know what we're doing by changing Sherwood? And so we had multiple interactions with the blog. Several of them came out to a League of Women Voters presentation we did a couple weeks ago. And then just this last week, we met with more than 30 neighbors from that neighborhood on a Sunday afternoon at the Senior Center. And it was really a wonderful conversation. And what we were able to do in talking with the neighborhood is learn more of the history of the neighborhood and the history of the development that's happened in this area. And I would say that's a good example of where we believe there are some different things we can do here that maybe actually help fix some of the things that happened in the past. So what I would say right now is this will most definitely change, this area right in here. And hopefully we'll actually have that change when we come back to the Planning Commission the next time. But that's an example of how the process is designed to, as people come into the process, we can make modifications and engage. Whoops, I'm sorry, I didn't point out, this was that concept we were talking about with the lawn in front of the library and that parking. So we think there's some other ways to accomplish this and not necessarily completely change Sherwood there in front of the library. So I'm going to roll a little faster here. So rethinking and reorganizing the transportation infrastructure. Now, as we look at the whole area, a couple key moves here. I talked about creating a new street, and it will be right through here. So this is what we all think of as Jerry's Hardware, which is now soon to be Walgreens, and the new Walgreens drive-through here. This is the Jerry's or City, it's actually the City parking ramp behind Jerry's. But to actually create a bridge across the tracks right here and actually have this street go all the way through, which would go just north of the commons that I was just talking about, and then it turns into a pedestrian street right here as you can cross the bridge over to the City Hall side of the highway. Ultimately reorienting the development on the north side, so what we think of as Starbucks, the Starbucks building right now, actually reorienting itself to look south towards the commons, but also still having parking and opportunities for fronting on the other side as well. But it's taking advantage of a reorientation and the idea of a street coming through here. But then taking Gus Young Lane and having that as a one-way going out. So we can help, by doing that, we can reassign turn lanes up on Vernon to Interlochen to make the traffic actually flow much better. And I'm not going to get into all the details of the traffic engineering, but there are some ideas there that can help move traffic through. The other big idea is this frontage road concept. So right now, if you come off of Highway 100, you drive across the Vernon, you kind of dip down and then curve up to Arcadia. The idea is to keep this road up all the way to Eden. And so we'll go back, I think there's that image, we'll come back later, but this would be sort of this retaining wall gateway concept along here, but also having the ability for streets to come poking in to Arcadia. This idea is creating a more rich street network which then distributes the traffic better than it is today. So we don't have all of the points of traffic coming in one or two locations. In the long term, we could do the same thing. It's called a split diamond. We could do the same thing on the east side. And I think I have a diagram here that shows, you can see in the gray, all of the highway infrastructure, these loops that were actually built when these were two highways intersecting. These aren't two highways anymore. It's a city street meeting a highway. So all this additional highway infrastructure could go away, creating other public amenities or development opportunities or just green space for nothing else. And this just gives you an idea of the richer street network that we will have 30 years from now, hopefully, than what we have today. The left is today, the right is in the future. This idea, again, another view of the commons and this public or community building is thinking about preserving future space for rail. So just in this illustration alone, it's showing how the buildings are set back a bit from the rail to provide for a future opportunity if that were to come to pass, whether it's light rail or whatever here. We're not in the business of negotiating that or taking a strong opinion on it one way or another. That's a whole nother discussion going on in our larger community. But we need to make sure we're preserving those opportunities for the future no matter what. And currently, we have transit, we have bus, commuter bus going downtown to other places, and that route is shown in blue on the right. And so these are all areas where we see people doing what we call the hide and ride now. And, so they're parking around this district right now and jumping on the bus and going downtown. What we want to do is actually consolidate where that parking is happening. And we actually have Metro Transit very interested in funding some parking, structured parking in this area. So that could be an opportunity here in the near future. We can make this change incrementally. I'm not going to get into it in great detail, but the idea is we're starting to think about what are the first pieces that can start all this happening. And it includes, obviously, the land we can control in turn. When I say we, the public. So we got the bus garage, we got the public works facility as ultimately two easy places to start the process. And again, that notion of enhancing the public realm to incentivize the private development to happen. And here you can see all of the substantial public realm that could ultimately be improved and developed in this plan. And this is just a view looking up Arcadia. So if you're down on Eden looking up the hill, if you were busily on your way up to Starbucks, this would be, you'd be driving up this street. So on the left is that community building. In this scheme, it shows sort of a townhouse type scale housing along Arcadia with mixed use development, slightly taller, more dense development on the highway side behind. And with that, I'll have Kevin kind of close it out.
Thanks, Mike. So a couple of slides on what happens next. Obviously, we're in a public comment period now. This is the public hearing that we're holding, but we're also holding public comment open until March 9th. And there's a variety of ways that people can chime in. We've talked about the blog on the Edina Citizen Engagement site. Encourage folks to get on there and share their thoughts about this. We really want to hear from people. Well, tonight, we had an open house out in the atrium here that included a number of poster boards, et cetera, that gave you an idea of what we're working on. We will have a portion of that will continue to be set up here at City Hall as well as at the Hennepin County Library in the Grandview area, along with comment cards. So if folks at their leisure want to come through, take a look at that. We'll also have copies of the full plan or framework available at those places and comment cards so that people can write down some thoughts. Obviously, tonight we have the open house and the public hearing. We're scheduled on April 17th to make a presentation to the City Council. As you talked about at the beginning of the hearing, Mr. Chair, we're proposing that we gather some of that comment here tonight. We reconvene as a steering committee. We're going to meet on March 8th, talk a little bit more about that. Obviously, those meetings are open to the public. Anybody who'd like to join us is welcome, and see if there's any tweaks that we want to make to this process. And then what we're really going to be doing is preparing recommendations as we bring this to the City Council and recommend that they adopt this as the framework for going forward. We're also going to be doing some thinking about what's the process that accompanies that. And I think it's important for folks who are watching to recognize that this is an ongoing process. We are moving in the right direction. We are evolving. It's getting further ahead. But it's not set in stone. And we recognize that one of the reasons we changed this from what we were going to call a small area plan to what we are now calling a development framework is that it's not really intended to be a blueprint. This is kind of a vision of the direction we think things can go. But as Mike talked about, what we're trying to do is use public areas to create an incentive for private property owners to make changes. And so, for instance, one of the comments we've gotten is from the McGreevy Funeral Home, and you may have noticed that some of the graphics show a street going between that new frontage road and Arcadia, and it kind of goes through between two of those properties. That may or may not happen. That's just one vision of how it might unfold on those private properties. And so I want to be careful to caution people not to take this too literally. It's a vision. We think it's an important direction. We think it creates some images and graphics and ideas that we think can really improve this area. But we recognize that it's going to have to evolve as we go forward. And so we envision that an implementation phase would begin after we go to the City Council on the 17th of April, or whenever they approve or adopt this as the framework moving forward. I did want to just summarize a little bit of the comments that we have heard so far so that you have a flavor of that, and then encourage folks to make more comments. I won't go through them in great detail because, and this will be available to folks who have looked at the blog site. You'll see that there's comments on that. We haven't gotten too many comments by mail or email at City Hall. But there's, we've had a whole discussion about retail versus community versus housing. How do you mix all of the uses that are going to happen? How are we going to regulate this in the future? The Planning Commission will be interested to hear that we're tinkering with the notion of a form-based code, which doesn't focus so much on what uses there are but instead focuses on the built structure and the kind of environment and atmosphere you're creating. We're going to have some discussion about height and density as we move forward. One of the things that will be related to is financing. There's some public realm improvements, there's some public property improvements that are going to cost some money, and we're going to have to think about what are the ways that we can pay for those. Part of that is by additional density. You know, if you take, for an example, of the bus garage, which right now generates no tax revenue, if that were to go into private hands and you increase the density, there's some tax revenue that can come out of that can help us finance some of the public realm things that we're doing. So that's a small example of what we really need to do in the implementation phase, to be looking through those kinds of details. So these are, you know, some of the additional comments. There's been some discussion about what kind of housing should be in this area, how does that mix. The bus garage has been a topic from forever. Obviously, the 53rd and Vernon is something that's come up from the Richmond Hills neighborhood. So that's a good overview, and I'll just close out by kind of returning to this big picture vision. You know, if you were out here earlier tonight, you'd see that we had some aerial photographs, and they extended from 1953 all the way to the present. And what's clear in that, you know, 70 or 80 years is that there's been a lot of change. And we started this process by recognizing that if that kind of change happened over the last 50, 60, 70 years, there surely will be change going forward in the next 10, 20, 30 years. And the question isn't whether there's going to be change, it's whether we're going to have control over that change, whether we're going to influence that change. And that's what this process is all about. So it looked like this in 1953. Maybe by 2023 it looks like this. So I want to thank you. I know that this was a long presentation, but I appreciate your attention, and I look forward, as I know the steering committee members do, to hearing comments from the public.
Thank you, Commissioner Stoughton. Thank you to the members of the task force and all the folks that worked on this presentation and on this program over the past several months, and it's been an interesting process to watch. We're now in a public comment portion. We'd like to hear comments from the public, reactions to what was presented tonight, your thoughts, concerns, positive comments, whatever. I would again request, since there are several people here tonight who might wish to make comments, that I'd appreciate it if you don't just repeat what the last three people said, but if you got something new, we're interested in hearing it. So with that, we'll turn it open to comments. Please come forward to either podium, give us your name and address, and let's hear what you have to say.
I guess I might as well start it out, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Bill McCreevy, and my family owns and operates Washburn-McCreevy Funeral Chapels, located right across the freeway here, Highway 100 and West 50th Street. And I appreciate very much the comments that have been made here, and I hope nobody thinks I'm overreacting by going on public record with what I have to say. But let me begin by saying I think it's a beautiful plan. Obviously, an awful lot of hard work put into it, an awful lot of thought and consideration. But we as a business, a family-owned and operated business, have a significant concern, which has already been addressed by Kevin, which I appreciate very much, that there's a road running right through the middle of our building. And so I hate it when that happens. So, you know, it ruins the whole ambiance of the building. So we just want to go on public record saying that, you know, we don't like to see that, but we also recognize that it's not a blueprint. It's not something that can't be adjusted or changed or that type of thing. But so everybody kind of knows what we're talking about. Gus Young Lane that runs right between Blockbusters and Devani's runs just right into our building, kind of, and it stops right there. And the plan shows where it would continue on through, going east. Yeah, right through the chapel. So, here's the thing: is that we've made a significant investment in that property. And I don't know if you remember, you talk about change, if you remember the old building and how it had a very low pitched roof. And we heightened the pitch quite a bit, completely gutted the building, put a brand new roof on with a much more of a pitch so that we could have split cedar shakes on it to make it look much more aesthetically pleasing. So we're hoping that it'll be there for many, many decades to come. 600 plus families use that facility every year to have a funeral or visitation. It's one of the highest volume funeral chapels in the state of Minnesota, and serves the community very, very well. And we just hope that it continues to be there for a very long time, and that we can be a part of the community. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCreevy.
Good evening. I'm John Menke. I live at 5301 Pinewood Trail in Edina, the Richmond Hills area. We sort of have the opposite problem of Mr. McGravy. They eliminated the road into and out of our neighborhood, the only one. So we'd like to keep Sherwood Road open. We'll pray.
You compromise, you each get a half a road.
Seriously, I've been very impressed with this process, with the openness of the process, sort of taken aback at the tail end when it affected our neighborhood. And I would have one suggestion. I think how this process opened up for this planning was really impressive. But as you do these plans in the future, to really take the time to reach out to the single-family homes, at least, in apartments or condos, that abut the areas you're considering doing the planning on and have had the citizens on, and do what the commission does when there's a zoning change: send out letters. Make sure they know what's happening. I was very impressed with Commissioners Fisher and Staunton and a couple other people that met with our neighborhood, had a special meeting Sunday, and then said what they said they were going to say in here about Sherwood and the parking. And I thank you all, and I thank you for paying attention to us.
Thank you, Mr. Menke.
Good evening. My name is Steve Ullum, and I live at 5229 Richwood Drive, and that's in the Richmond Hills development. And I too would want to say I'm very impressed with the scope and sequence and the dynamics of the changes that are proposed for this, for I'm going to say our neighborhood, because truly I think that maybe one thing that's missing in the maps is that you talked about it being a regional connection, and it really is a connection for the neighborhoods. And many of our neighborhoods are one way in, one way out. And not on the north side of Vernon, it's the same as our corner down in the southwest corner. And then on the other side of the railroad tracks, here, the Richmond Hills Development number 2. And by Our Lady of Grace, I just think it has a tremendous impact on those communities. If you're talking about increasing the density to a level that I'm not sure that it's able to support necessarily. I like the idea that it's that Highway 100 and Vernon and 50th is a kind of a regional connection and it's a wide area, a large area of Edina. I mean, what's our next step is Excelsior Boulevard and kind of a halfway Benton. We can get kind of off there and on there going in certain directions. Otherwise, it's crosstown. And it's really a unique neighborhood and development area, but it also, I think you need to really be considerate and can take into consideration the fact that there's going to be a lot of traffic coming and going through there, and I'm not sure how you're going to really deal with that. And I think the other thing is that you almost need to, and you've got the public land and the areas there, and you're talking about developing those, and I think personally, you really need to come up with a plan for that area first. Chipping away at the edges, changing roads around the edges without having a real clear plan on Vernon and the traffic patterns you're going to create in that neighborhood, and then try and build in the middle of it. I think it's not really going to, not in the best interest of the people that live in this community, and I'm talking about the Grandview area, and the people in whole of Edina. you're really limiting their ability to move around in the city. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ullum.
Hi, I'm Eric Hooger from 5257 Richwood Drive.
What was your last name again?
Hooger.
Hooger. Thank you.
Hooger. And the comments I just wanted to make were that I think the project is a great idea. There's lots of positive aspects on it. And the main concern I have, though, and it was pointed out in the meeting today, and I want to thank Kevin for doing so, and Michael Fisher for doing so, is Sherwood Road. The concern that I have regarding that is if Sherwood Road is closed, my neighborhood, Richmond Hills, would turn into probably one of the only neighborhoods where you would have to drive through a mixed-use condo development to access the neighborhood or drive through a parking lot to get to it. And that's the concern that I have, is that I don't want my neighborhood to turn into an odd access, whereas right now we have a road. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hooger. If I might respond to that, I do want to emphasize what Commissioners Staunton and Fisher did say about the input from the Richmond Hills neighborhood and the question of access in Sherwood Drive. And that will be seriously taken under advisement by the task force. So we thank you for your comments, and we do recognize those. Is there anyone else who'd like to address the issue? Ask Commissioner Staunton if he has any comments in response or in continuation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and fellow members of the Commission. No, I think that it's good to hear those. You know, this isn't everyone's forum, so I hope that people will find other opportunities, whether that be comment cards or online comments or an email or even regular old mail to City Hall. We're interested in all those comments, so appreciate that. And I think one of the things that's been really positive about this process is, you know, both the comments that Mr. McCreevy made, as well as the comments from the Richmond Hills neighborhood, are examples of how the process has brought those to the surface. We get to kind of hear those and recognize those, and I think this will give the steering committee an opportunity to react to those and move forward. Just one last thing that I would like to say as we turn it over to the Planning Commission for comments. I want to recognize the Metropolitan Council as well. I neglected to do that earlier. It was through a Livable Communities grant of $100,000 that we received that really made this, was really critical to making this second phase of the planning process happen. It was what helped us finance our consulting team, which was critical to the process, and we really appreciate that investment in our community, and we think it's going to be an important part of making this area a really better place.
Thank you. You did mention that you're having a steering committee meeting on March 8th.
March 8th.
That's open to the public?
Absolutely. I'm not sure. Are we going to do it at the Senior Center? So it'll be at the Senior Center. March 8th. Is the April 12th one there too? Okay. And then April 12th will be another steering committee meeting that will be at the Grange Hall, which is just across the street from City Hall and from the Perkins.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments before we move to close the public hearing? All right, thank you very much for your participation. I will take a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second? Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate your attention and your comments and your input to this process. The matter is now up here at the commission table for comments. Any commissioners wish to address any issues? Sure. Commissioner Carpenter?
I'm not sure if I have issues as much as I do have a couple of questions myself that maybe were addressed, but I didn't catch it during the presentation. And I don't know if Commissioner Staunton or Commissioner Fisher can speak to it, but one of them that I think came up early on in the process was the idea of kind of cleaning up the southbound access on the frontage road going on to Highway 100. And was that addressed? I wasn't quite sure.
Yeah, it's something that we've affectionately dubbed the danger ramp. I think that everybody who lives in the neighborhood knows, where you have a ramp coming from Vernon where people can get up to 60 miles an hour, and then you've got a short stub ramp just near OLG where you're trying to get on and merge with those folks. The frontage road that Commissioner Fisher talked about is really designed to address that by taking out that ramp and really creating an intersection at Eden and what would be the new frontage road. So there would be an intersection there, probably a controlled intersection, and then you'd take a right turn to get on to there. So you'd still have one-way traffic coming south on that frontage road from the off-ramp at Highway 100, but it would stop then at Eden, and then you'd have a chance to go on. So we think it would be much safer. The response we got from MnDOT during the process was quite positive about making those changes as well. These are suffice it to say, it's not in their manual to do on-ramps that way anymore.
Thanks. And the other question I had was just, I guess, a general information one regarding how much input the school district has had in this process. I know there's a lot of talk about leveraging the public assets, with the bus garage being one of them. And I'm so curious to what extent the school district has been a player in this.
Well, the good news is that they've been very involved. We have had a school board representative both on the community advisory team during the guide process, and then Peyton Robb, who, when this process started, was a member of the school board, and the process has gone long enough that he's no longer a member of the school board, has been an integral member of this and actually a representative on our executive committee as well as the steering committee. And so we've been in communication through him with the school board. I know he is regularly updating the school district on this.
I'd just like to add a comment about that, a couple comments. Peyton has been actually fantastic, and I hope people don't think he was forced off the school board because he's been too cooperative or something. But, you know, the thing about the school district's approach on this is that I think they've been very consistent from the beginning in saying, look, they're willing to be very open to ideas with that property. It's just that their mission is teaching kids. It's not real estate. So it has to be a cost-even kind of deal. And that's where I think Kevin was alluding to that a little earlier, that at the next phase, when we get into implementation, we really have to figure out financial tools that would allow that to happen. If you just did it purely on density, you know, you'd have to put a pretty big building on that site to pay for moving a school bus garage. So there has to be other vehicles that kind of works and balances the needs of everyone. So, and that's been a topic of discussion throughout the process.
The other challenge, of course, that they have is any transition has to be a turnkey transition. You have to they have to close one day and open the next day in a new place.
Yeah, you can't just stop the bus operation.
Because even in the summer, they're doing bus service.
Other comments by the commission?
I'll go to a comment now as opposed to a question. I think this whole thing has been absolutely amazing to watch. And I mean, other people have already shared their comments in that regard as well. I'll just jump on the bandwagon. I think that the entire crowd, that all the steering committee and people that have been in the leadership of this have just done something that's been quite amazing to watch on the periphery. And I just love it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Potts?
I'll echo that comment by Commissioner Carpenter and just say I think the job that the executive committee, the steering committee, the consultants have done has really been remarkable in terms of taking a very balanced approach, dealing with a high level of complexity of issues that have arisen on this site, and really doing absolutely the best they could to cast a net wide enough to take public input on every level possible. And I think the decision-making has been very sound to date. The flexibility has been great, and that gives me a lot of confidence that we can deal with the concerns that came up, stated tonight, came out of the residents of Richmond Hills, that that's a challenge that we can solve. And it wouldn't surprise me if one or two others come up, just due to the size and scope of this project that we're facing to bring about an area of change here and do it well for the community. I think we've got all the right pieces and the right people in place, and it's been great to have a turnout like this and to get the feedback, whether it's in a public setting like this or whether it's online input or other ways that people send their comments in. Again, though, credit to the leadership team here for fielding them well and responding to them well, and really acting, I think, with very selflessly here in the best interest of the city to bring together this. Well, we're just putting our toe in the water right now. There's a lot more to do in terms of future steps, but we're off to a very good start.
Other comments? Commissioner Platter?
So I concur wholeheartedly with Commissioner Carpenter and Potts. It's been a great effort by everyone, but I want to call out specifically Kevin Staunton is doing a great job on this, and all your hard work and keeping up with everyone and hurting all the people and everyone dropping in and out, keeping this thing going for almost 2 years now. I just really appreciate that, and I hope everyone else does all the work that you've done on this, and keep it up, keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Other comments? This has been just, this is a really interesting, for the city, for the task force, for the residents, a really interesting process. It's unlike a situation that we had with Centennial Lakes, where we had a big tract of land where it was sort of a clean slate and could develop something, commercial and residential and parkland at one spot. Here we have an area with a combination of public property and private property. Try and take a look at what's going to happen in the future as this changes, with the hope that the public improvements can be such that the private individuals see economic benefit to making some enhancements to the area and changes, and something that can be done to enhance this area, enhance the community, enhance the neighborhood. And again, thank you, Commissioner Staunton, for your work, and to the task force for everything you've done. Any other comments? I think then that the process going forward will be the task force will take these comments under advisement. They will come back to the Planning Commission. We will take a look at it, and at some point move this thing, hopefully in a positive way, to the City Council for their consideration.
And Mr. Chair, my hope is, we're tentatively looking at March 28th, at the March 28th Planning Commission meeting, to return to you with any adjustments to the framework and seek your recommendation to bring it to the City Council.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item of business before the Planning Commission will be a sketch plan review. You are all welcome to stay for that. I understand why you might leave. I would ask, if you do leave, please be quiet until you leave the room, because we do want to continue business here with the Commission. And again, thank you very much for your participation and your attention. Okay, the next item of business, sketch plan review for 6500 France. Carrie?
Thank you, Chair, members of the Planning Commission. The next item is a sketch plan review at 6500 France. As you're getting more and more familiar with the sketch plan process, it's just presenting a potential project and the Planning Commission providing comments and direction to the applicant, and from there those comments will be forwarded on to the City Council for their consideration at this sketch plan level. The property is located at 6500 France Avenue. It's kitty corner from the hospital. This is a bird's eye view. This is the Point of France here. It's the site just to the north. It's the existing Milovitz building. This is a look at what that building looks like today. The applicant is proposing to tear this structure down and build a new 60,000 square foot medical office building with an attached parking ramp. They're considering retail on the first level that would include potentially a coffee shop and medical supply type retail uses. The property currently is zoned POD planned office district, and the applicant would be contemplating a rezoning of the site to planned unit development. This site is located, as we've looked at this map earlier this evening, this is located in a potential area of change. And any time a rezoning is proposed in those areas, the decision to do a small area plan rests essentially with the City Council. So we would be looking for the Planning Commission recommendation on whether a small area plan would be necessary before we consider any rezoning, similar to what we did with the proposal up at 44th and France and 70th and France as well. The site is guided for regional medical in the comprehensive plan, so the proposed uses are consistent with that existing designation. This is a quick look at the site plan as proposed. Access would be provided off of 65th Street in and out of the parking ramp in this location. The applicant was contemplating a shared access with the Point of France. However, it doesn't look like they are willing to share in that access, so they would have to make some modifications. It was to be a loading area and the garbage pickup and dumping in that location there. They would have to make some modifications to come into the ramp. When looking at the current zoning in the POD district, there would be a number of variances that would be required under that existing zoning, 10 of them to be exact. There would be the building setback requirement is based on the height of the building, which would be 55 feet. The applicant's proposing a 15-foot setback from 65th, 15-foot setback on France, and a 20-foot setback on the south lot line that abuts the Point of France. The parking structure would be 46 feet tall, and they're proposing 15-foot setback, 10-foot setback, and 10-foot setback. So variances would be needed under the existing zoning today. Also, the height of the building would be 55 feet, as I mentioned, and the district requirement is 48 feet. The building coverage requirement in POD district is 30%. The building coverage proposed here is 63%, another variance there. The maximum floor area ratio is 50% in this district, and the proposal is for 106 square feet, or 106%. And the parking stall, there would be just short parked. They would be providing parking based on the need of the building itself, but it would be short parked based on code. So a variance would be needed there. Now, again, as we've talked about with the PUD process, there wouldn't be variances. It would be rolled into the PUD zoning. And if approved, or if this is a project that we want to pursue, those existing or proposed setbacks become the requirement for that district. This is somewhat similar with the Twin City Orthopedic Building. You may recall that was approved back in 2008. There were 9 variances associated with that project. Similar, maybe not quite as large as we're seeing here, but there were 9 variances. The PUD process was not available to us at that time. So with that, the proposal would be an improvement over the existing uses that are out there. The proposed uses certainly would fit into this district, kind of that medical campus setting. Staff would be concerned, however, with the number of variances that would be, the number of variances based on the POD zoning. But with that, I would turn it over to the commission for any questions or the developers here to make their presentation.
Okay, questions of staff? Commissioner Platter?
Carrie, do you know on the Twin City Orthopedic, what was the FAR that ultimately was built there in the building coverage? Do you recall? Or wasn't there a variance for that?
There was not a variance for that. My recollection was that was regional medical zoning district, and they met that requirement for that zoning, so that was not one of the variances.
Do you recall the FAR for?
It was very similar to what we're looking at here. It was over 100%.
So it's over 1 for regional medical?
Right.
Other questions of staff? Thank you. Would the proponent care to discuss their ideas?
Absolutely. Steve Michaels, I'm in Mall Development. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. I'd like to introduce our team that's provided you the information that's before you, and then I'll highlight a few items of the project, and then Ed Farr, the architect, will go through in detail how we got to the development that's before you. Ed Farr Architects will be doing the shell building and hopefully a lot of the interior improvements for the different clinics that will be part of the building. Civil engineering will be Mark Roush from Alliant Engineering, who has done other projects here in the community. General contractor will be RJM Construction, Rodney Hines, who did the Twin City Orthopedic building, and then myself and Aurora Investments will be doing the development and coordination of the project. So the building that's proposed for you would be a 4-story medical office building. It will have probably 6 to 15 tenants within the building. We do not have specific clinics at this time ready to go. We do have 2 or 3 groups that are contemplating the building. We feel it's going to be a very high visible building on the corner of 65th in France. It certainly has the environment of a regional medical area. It has a large draw within both Edina and the surrounding community based on the quality specialists that are in the area. Part of the key of the project is to have a building that has enough critical mass to have referrals within the building. That's why we're asking for a 64,000-foot building. The different clinics interrefer among themselves, and that's very important as we see in the different clinics that I've been involved in the metropolitan area. Ed Farr was selected to do the building. It's more than just a general office building. Ed has done some significant buildings here in the Twin Cities, and each building he does put a signature component on it. This particular building, your eye is drawn to the scalloped crowns across the top, accenting the corner at 65th in France. The other critical component we feel would be the pedestrian component of allowing the building to be brought up to the France Avenue area, having a wider street pedestrian walkway for sitting. We've got significant flowers planted both on the north, south, and east side of the project. We're trying to create an environment that's more than just an office building, with some retail on that main floor with coffee shop, some soft retail goods. The retail component would be a minor component. It's not necessary that we have to have it, but we feel it adds to the overall chemistry of the building. We do have brought in Tangletown Gardens, and they'll be making a brief presentation also. We feel they've done an outstanding job in the Twin Cities with unique and special garden-type applications to the areas that they've been involved with. So I'd like to introduce Ed Farr and have him go through the specifics of the building, and then we're certainly available for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. And Carrie, for the introductory remarks, Chair and Commissioner. My name is Ed Farr with Edward Farr Architects, 7710 Golden Triangle Drive, Eden Prairie.
And if I may have control of the screen here, I'd like to bring up some graphics. Thank you. I'll try not to be redundant with what's been said before. This was the aerial that Carrie had showed you already, so I won't bother with that. You know where the site is and the site plan. Just to talk about a few comments. The ingress and egress to the parking deck here along 65th Street is one of the existing curb cuts that exist along 65th right now. One of the things that wasn't stated is there is a curb cut along France Avenue right now. From the old drive-through bank that the building used to have the use of a banking facility. Now it's a law firm, and we are giving up that curb cut along France Avenue so that our only ingress and egress will be along 65th Street. One of the things we're doing is trying to save the perimeter trees that are existing, specifically our western property line to our neighbor to the west. There's a row of beautiful ash trees there that we're going to save. There's an existing and significant visual buffer between our Point of France neighbor to the south. There are ash trees along this property line that we'll be retaining, of course supplementing it with our own landscaping. And then there are also some ash trees along 65th. You may know if you ever come east on 65th from Lake Valley View that those trees are beautiful, arching over 65th Street already, and we are proposing to retain most all of those except for the one entering our parking deck. So that leaves us with new plantings along France Avenue. As Steve and Carrie both mentioned, the concept here is to bring a pedestrian-friendly urban environment to this site, make it very welcoming for people to walk and appreciate a pedestrian-scaled, friendly environment here, and bring the focus up to France Avenue and parking in back. So it's a completely different gesture to the site plan here from the existing use. We certainly want to make the corner of 65th and France very important, and as demonstrated by the rendering, I think we're achieving that. Tangletown Gardens, like Steve mentioned, is being brought in. They've done some very significant work here in the Twin Cities area, downtown Minneapolis, and throughout the area. And is Allison here, as a matter of fact? Is it? Oh, I'm sorry, Olivia. My apology. If I could just have her speak to some of the work that they've done and her concepts here for the site for just a moment here.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Olivia Spira with Tangletown Gardens at 5353 Nicollet Avenue. And as you know, this site is a prominent spot on France and 65th, and Tangletown would like to create a welcoming outdoor environment for employees and visitors alike by designing a bold and lush planting. We also aim to create an aesthetic that enhances the attention to detail of the building and also the sidewalk treatment with lighting and benches. These images that you see up on the screen depict the unique and diverse plant palette that Tangletown Gardens typically uses. We hope to achieve a wow factor through texture, color, and plant diversity and plant height. By layering plant height, the plant spaces feel more dynamic. Spaces will contain at least 3 different heights, including canopy, low shrubs, perennials, and ground covers to achieve the interest. And using this design technique, we can bring the building to scale with the human experience. In the 2 left-hand photos, you can see how the use of canopy and height variation among the perennials is visually pleasing and softens the surrounding hardscape. The landscape design will also consider color as an element that unifies all the green spaces on the property. Perennials will be chosen so that the blooms are staggered throughout the season for seasonal interest, and prominent areas such as at the building entrance will be infused with annuals for some more bold color. Texture also affects the perception of distance and space and creates visual interest. And to do this, we will use an unusual and diverse plant palette of both coarse and fine textured foliage. Bold variegated leaves will be contrasted with delicate flowers and narrow leaves. Also, Tangletown Gardens is known for our unique plant varieties, as we grow many of the plants ourselves at our local farm. And through unique plant selection and design elements such as texture, color, and plant height, we hope to create and showcase a vibrant and healthy landscape for 65th 100 France. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a blow-up daytime view of the entrance of 65th and France, showing what Steve was talking about, trying to make this a very pedestrian-friendly and inviting space. Awnings over the storefront canopies along France Avenue, pedestrian benches. We talked to the city engineer about your initiative to enhance a corner space within the downtown districts with some protective bollards at the corner to protect pedestrians approaching the crosswalk back and forth. So we would engage in that process and enhance that plaza surface area according to your initiatives that you're going through. Certainly some very attractive architectural lighting on the face of the building, the plantings that were just discussed, and some overstory trees. So we feel with a combination of these pedestrian enhancements, it's going to be just a wonderful experience, and much different than the way it is right now. Here's the main facade, the France Avenue facade. Again, traditional building. Our mission here is, of course, to be a healing center. And so warm materials, very inviting. People are coming here in pain, and we want to make them as comfortable as possible. The use of face brick, very warm material, common, understandable material. The base, of course, with the arches and a lot of the rusticated limestone look to the strength of the building. And then up at the top, a very distinctive cornice line with some very interesting shadow lines and articulation to make it a very interesting building on the skyline, punctuated at the corner at 65th and France with that scalloped crown element that will look good day and night. Just a couple of images I'll fly around real quick here for you. You can start to see a parking deck along 65th Street, which we're going to be using the same compatible building materials as the building itself. A lot of the arching and the rusticated base and the tonality of the structure. I'm showing it to you here with the trees that are existing. Actually, the trees are much bigger. I had to scale the trees down for my rendering because you couldn't see anything. So I just decided to peel them off in the next slide here. It's the same image just without the trees, so you can see the architecture, but of course the trees would be there. Similar on the eastbound approach on 65th as you pass by the apartments on your right and pass by the Twin City Orthopedics building. This would be the view as you approach the stoplight. Here's that row of trees that exist on our western property line that would screen the parking structure. Please note that I'm showing all of these renderings with the full build parking structure up for the entire height. We're not proposing to build this structure at these heights that you're seeing in my renderings, but 1 story less. We're proposing 275 cars with proof of parking to add this final level deck. We wanted to show you what the ultimate visual impact could be, but we're proposing 1 level shorter. This same view without trees looks like this. Again, the same building material themes going on in the parking structure, variety of material, texture, shadow lines, but again, with the trees there, it'll be mostly hidden, especially at 1 story less.
Mr. Farr, just so I'm clear and everybody's clear, the last drawing that you just showed. So that's the full height of what could be with the proof of parking, but what you'd originally start with would be one story less than that on the parking garage. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification. Just some detailed building articulation here on the parking structure. And working my way around, this is as though I might be standing above the existing Fairview Southdale ramp looking to the south. Steve may point out later, we're going to be embracing a number of sustainable initiatives. One of the things we're looking at is solar. And originally we had contemplated it maybe over the parking ramp and with these low profile solar arrays that are available now. This would fit squarely underneath the line of sight for our parapet onto the office building, and so we'd probably put an array of about 5,000 square feet of solar panels up there if it would work out in our plan. I just wanted to show you this photograph of how low they are on rooftops, in case anybody has concerns about them sticking above the parapet. This is our north elevation view from the Point of France side. And I tried to model in the existing trees that are there. However, they are quite large, anywhere from 35 to 50 feet in height. I planted a flagpole on the right side of this rendering, which is not anything we're proposing, but that's existing right now in front of the two-story office building. There we go. Is that better? And that flagpole is approximately 62 feet high. Our building is 55 to that dark cornice. And it's just a point of reference. What I had an opportunity to do is to actually enter one of the units at 4th floor in Point of France and take a panoramic view out from that building to our site, pre-development obviously here. And this is a panoramic view from a 4th floor window. Our site, if I can, there we go. Sorry, we're going through too many microphones here. Our site starts approximately here, where these colored dumpsters are. That's the existing trash facility for the building. It goes over to the east, and if you can see way up here in the corner above the tree line is the flag. That's about 62 feet high. And so you can see the tree line that exists right now is about at flagpole height. Of course, we're in the dead of winter. There's no leaves on the trees. So the trees vary in height from about 35 to 60 feet tall. In the foreground here is the large cooling tower that Point of France has in their service yard here, and beyond, of course, is the Fairview Southdale parking structure. That's 4 stories in height. And just for relationship, pardon the poor photograph here, but if I turn around and point from our property towards the Point of France, this is their service yard on the south side of their property. The picture I took was up here in this unit on the 4th level looking out, so approximately the same building height as what we're showing. This exhibit just quickly shows the red zone that we were in discussions with the Point of France people on to share, so that we wouldn't have to have dual loading surfaces on our property and on theirs, thinking that maybe less pavement would be better. We were offered monetary relief and some landscaping, but those negotiations don't seem like they're going forward. So I'm going to skip over this, and we'll be able to have a Plan B, whereas back on our site plan off of 65th Street, we're going to have a curb cut there for emergency vehicle access, nighttime trash pickup, so that that can be off of the street adequately. Not unlike something that you've approved before in your community down at the law office, down off 494 and 169, that has a similar treatment off of the public road there, as well as the TCO loading dock just on the east side of their building. In which case our trash storage room would move up from the south end here to the north corner. So I'm going to leave it with that. If you have any questions, we'd be more than happy to entertain them. Steve's going to make just some closing comments regarding some sustainability and car topics, I believe.
We have tried to create some unique and special environmental issues for the building. Transportation is always key to these buildings. The plan that we have before you does show a full code-compliant parking ratio. We're running a business. We do not want to be short of parking. However, what we've seen over the past 6 to 8 years is we don't quite need as many car parks as we did 10 and 15 years ago. So we're requesting 275 parking stalls to be adequately serving the building. If we do feel we're short, then we will go to the graphs and charts that you see here. Some of the interesting transportation items that we would like to propose for the building. We're seeing a good number of electric cars. We will give them preferential treatment in the ramp. We'll have car charging stations for those. The smart cars take about half the parking stall size of our traditional cars, so we'll continue to promote that. There's a program that's provided by ZAP. They have a chip similar to a running race where you would have a chip on your scooter, bicycle, or motorcycle, and it actually monitors the number of times that you come into the facility. You can calculate the amount of CO2 poundage that you're reducing throughout the year. We will give incentives to those people based on the number of times they do come to the building. Their bikes, their scooters will be put in a warm temperature controlled environment as an incentive to get them to use that type of transportation. The other one that's very popular in Minneapolis is the Hour Car. We have talked to those, that business where we could provide 2 parking stalls where people that do take the alternative transportation, either bus, bike, or walk to the facility, if they do need a car, they can rent that. They're running about $6 to $8 an hour, and there's 34 of those locations within the Minneapolis area, and we'd like to have Edina at this location be the first one next to the hospital and the regional shopping center. So we've got some fun things that we'd like to do on the building. The solar does look like we're going to be able to do that as a reality. It'll cut down some of our electrical usage. We'll be doing a lot of different environmental VOCs within the building that we all talk about LEED and some of these other processes that I think over the coming years will become the norm. So we can talk about environmental items more in detail if you have a passion for that, but I know the night is getting late, so we're here to answer any questions on the project. We really appreciate your time and effort in this kind of a unique way. We've never done this before any city before, sketch plan reviews, so we're open to your comments. And we do look forward to doing really a spectacular office building on this site. So if you'd give us your comments and thoughts, we are open for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Michaels. The point of a sketch plan review such as this is to allow a developer to come before the commission, present a concept for possible development, hear what the commission members have to say, perhaps adjust their plans later and come back again, or depending on what the commission members say, abandoning a project. It's not definite that it's a go forward. It's not definite that it's not a go forward. But it's a sketch plan. It gives us an opportunity to take a look at an idea. I gather some of the residents here in the room tonight are from Pointe-à-France. I will tell you that we have received an official letter from the Board of Directors of Pointe-à-France expressing a couple of concerns, one about the size of the building, one that's where I think is an excellent point concerning the parking garage, that they would like to see some screening on the garage similar to what Twin City Orthopedics did to kind of soften the exterior of the garage. To the residents from Pointe-à-France, I would say that we're not conducting a public hearing tonight. It's an opportunity for you as well as the commission to hear what these ideas are. I will commend to the developers your letter, if you've not already seen it, and hope that if this project does move forward, that like other developers in town, they will work with the neighborhood to assure that the best possible development can result. With that, I have a couple of questions, or one other comment on for this developer and for any other developer that comes before the commission with a sketch plan idea. We just had a sketch plan relating to 70th and France, and at the last meeting, although I was not here, I did read the minutes. What was presented as a proposal, a formal proposal, was less enticing to the commission than what the sketch plan was. So I would caution developers about overselling things on a sketch plan. If you're going to oversell when you make an actual proposal, so no surprises. I do have a question. With respect to the retail that you would propose on the first floor, is this conceived to be, medically related retail or general retail?
Mr. Chairman, it would be for convenience of the neighborhood and/or the clinics within the building. We're anticipating a traditional coffee shop, possibly a 3,000 to 4,000 foot direct pharmacy that would supply pharmaceuticals for the patients in the building. Not sure right now. We would like to have some sort of retail, possibly a sandwich shop. It's not a high priority, as I mentioned. Our goal is to do a traditional medical office building. We would be code compliant on whatever we put on that main floor, though. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Other questions of the proposer? Commissioner Scherer.
I'd just like to clarify, I'm looking at the site plan right now. You mentioned that it does not look like you will be successful in sharing egress with the property that is currently owned by Point of France, and that you will now be redirecting your garage pickup and the items that would have occurred to the south to your north entrance off of 65th. What happens then as I look at this plan? There's sort of considerable space allowed there. Does it fill with plants? Does it fill with green space? That area to the south that you would have used for the entrance?
Good question. It will be filled with green space.
Okay.
That's correct. We have no other use for it other than for that activity.
Okay.
So it would be green space.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions in no particular order here. So, first of all, I would share the concerns on the parking and the screening, and that any headlights do not shine in any other adjacent residential either direction. I believe to the west there's also something towards that direction at all, and also on the screening comments for that. And then I had a question on the parking ramp entrance along 65th Street. What I'm concerned about is stacking coming back onto France in that area, either turning into the ramp or potentially coming out, and what happens with that. So have you looked at all, and I don't know if it works for grades either, actually moving the parking entrance down, the bay to the west, that piece there? Just a thought. Like I said, I'm worried about stacking on 65th Street. Maybe your parking plan will, or your traffic plan will come up with something like that. We said the existing trees on 65th, you're going to keep all those. That's I thought a very good thing. I was driving around the site and I was really concerned that all those very mature trees would just be leveled like a lot of people seem to do. So thank you for that. And then maybe you didn't get into it, but biking and pedestrian entrances along the street frontage, were there biking areas there, storage, or was that going inside?
I can show you on the site plan.
Yeah,
yes.
maybe that'd be
We do have
great.
some bike areas. On the first level of the parking structure off of 65th Street, we have a corner here that will be unusable for parking. That's where we were going to have some bicycle and scooter parking available because we want to introduce cars into the site and have appropriate number of cars off the street, addressing your stacking concern at least when they enter the site prior to finding a parking stall. So this was going to be our area for bicycles. We also had some, the lower level of the building below grade is a 25 or 26 car parking area as well. And so we're going to have some scooter and indoor bike storage down there. We'll also have changing rooms for people who want to take their bike to work as well.
Okay. And then one thing on the roof, I know you're in early pre-design, but I would caution you on noise from any rooftop equipment there and how that would work out with the adjacent residential as well. It looks, you know, how the closeness to that, and doing it, I'd hope you'd come back and show what, you know, the noise levels at the property line, and that it met all the ordinances along with that as well. So I realize there is a cooling tower there right now from the other place, but we also wouldn't want to take any noise back onto the existing residential there. And then one last thing, I think it's great, all the environmental things. Looks like you're almost LEED certifiable. Is that your goal, or are you more LEED compliant to show you could do it?
That's in discussion right now. It's premature to know if we're going to actually go through the process, but we've embodied all those thought processes so far, and we have the passion to go towards that. Whether we're actually going to get the plaque on the wall, we haven't decided that or not.
Mm-hmm. And then just one last thing on that, have you considered LED parking lot lighting? And then also making sure that the cutoffs are on the upper levels to minimize the spillage across the property lines as well.
Again, maybe just a little premature for that, but yes, LED lighting is very popular in parking decks now, is taking over. We will have a twin-T precast parking structure so that cellular design luckily helps shield the light distribution within those cellular ceiling panels, as you may know, and so that'll help besides the sharp cutoff features that we may have on the luminaire, and we'd be happy to look at LED as well. We were going to, on the top deck, the pole lighting, of course, have sharp cutoff features on those as well. Either metal halide or LED would be the white light, not the orange or
yeah, it had
yellow.
Metal halide in here.
Yes,
so.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And to your point about the headlights, all of our parking deck spandrels around the perimeter of every level will be approximately 3.5 to 4 feet high, well above headlight level, so that no matter where you park in the facilities, if you had your lights on, those wouldn't shine out.
Yeah, and it looked like you have slope parking, so as your ramps are always going up, right? So as you come up on that top level, is that shining up into something too? I would look at that as well.
Okay, appreciate your concern. Duly noted.
Commissioner Share?
Just two items. Have you done any traffic surveys at all about 65th Street and utilizing that as your primary entrance?
No, however, staff, I believe, is engaging a traffic report. Maybe Carrie can speak to that.
Yeah, traffic and parking study is underway. So that would be, should this move forward into a formal application, we would have the full traffic study and parking study.
Okay. I spent too much time driving up and down that street for personal reasons in the last year, and it's busy. I would add that. Secondly, I would just comment, I find the building design very attractive. I'm less enamored with the ramp. I would echo other comments that have been made from the Commission about the fact that more attractive screening, great friendliness to the neighbors, all of those elements I think would enhance your presentation going forward.
Okay, thank you. I may have failed to mention that below the tree canopy that exists now along our south property line, separating us from the Point of France as a buffer, we were planning on installing significant non-deciduous trees to act as that visual cover up to that 15, 20-foot level, because the canopy of those trees, you can't see it from here, I could scroll through, but on the site plan right here, this row of ash trees, if you can follow my cursor down here, their canopy starts at about 15 to 20 feet. So we were going to plant a lot of coniferous trees at the base of our parking structure also, in addition to the architectural enhancements that you mentioned.
Commissioner Potts?
A couple of questions, again, to make sure we're clear on the parking. You've stated 275 stalls proposed and said that is minus the top deck on the renderings you're showing? Is that?
Yes, that's correct.
And have you done a count where you would be if you did have the full built ramp?
Yes. That is 300 and 336.
Okay.
We have 26 cars on the lower level of the office building itself in the basement. The remainder are in the ramp. And the one level of the ramp is below grade, one at grade, three up.
Okay, thank you. And do you know, or Carrie, maybe you do, were this building, if all 60,000 square feet were medical, what the parking requirement would be? Now, does that?
It's a formula Take me a little bit to calculate it, but I can do that.
Okay, that's not critical tonight, but I guess as I think about the way this has been described, it seems like they're counting on most of the retail traffic to come from within the building, so it's not an additional trip to support the retail. And I was
in round numbers,
that would be factored in as part of the study that's being done by WSB. So we'll need to nail down the uses a little bit more.
Okay.
Sorry, in round numbers, I believe this medical district has approximately 5 per thousand plus 1 per dock. So it would be 60 times 5, 300 plus the docks. So hence, we're proposing to meet that at their 336 level.
Okay, good. And then a couple of comments relative to to a few things in the sustainability discussion. I think this goes along with the chair's warning about not overpromising in a sketch plan and returning with something different. It'd be good to hear some of those transportation plans fleshed out a little more. In other words, if people are going to ride the bus, do you need to coordinate new bus stops with MTC? I'm not familiar with the route that goes by the building to really make sure we can count on that. And then relative to proposing photovoltaics, sounds great to offset some of your electrical use within the building. I would encourage you to make sure you're keeping the initial energy level that the building is using as low as possible to begin with insulation strategies, good windows, good systems, good boilers, things like that. And then to cut down from there, that starts to tell a very impressive story. If you're cutting down the electrical load of a wasteful building, it's not so good. So just to bring some more details back would be great to go along and kind of flesh out that story a little bit.
Thank you.
I have a comment. One of the things that we try and do is make the city pedestrian friendly, and France Avenue is probably one of the least pedestrian. Highway 100 is probably less pedestrian friendly than France Avenue, but it's close. What, in addition to what you're doing right at the corner, do you have any ideas or proposals for how you're going to get people to cross France Avenue if you're going to go from the clinic office over to the hospital, for example? Can you hook a skyway into the garage across the street and then run that to the hospital? Or, what are your thoughts on how to manage pedestrian crossings of 65th and of France Avenue?
Well, sounds like we both have a few words to say.
Go ahead.
I'll start with just a photograph of a skyway that I brought out of one of my archives from a previous project, suggesting the fact that, yes, we are prepared to design our structure to accommodate a future skyway heading north from our building across 65th to the third level of the Fairview Southdale ramp, at which level they have the skyway that proceeds, of course, across France to the hospital, this structure right here. So only I thought there was some design relationship between the two photographs. Thank you again. I thought there was a design relationship between the two photographs with the express structure of the arch and then the tubular skyway nested within this structural form, so that we would be on the same level with this structure here.
Mr. Chairman, we have approached Fairview Southdale. We have given them a position paper on having a skyway, which would be for the benefit of both organizations, and we're pursuing that. We would like to make a proposal to Planning Commission, City Council for some tax increment financing for that skyway. We feel it'll be a benefit to the community and for the people in the immediate area that could come into the new medical building here, patronize one of the retailers such as the coffee shop, want to get to the hospital. If you do look at your site plan, there is a dotted line about 101 feet from the edge of the building to a very convenient spot within the Fairview Southdale parking ramp that would bring you right in out of the weather across their skyway into the hospital facility. So we think think that's an integral part to the overall project, and we would like to pursue that with vigor.
Okay. The other comment I would make is that this area is developing as a medical campus, and just from my own standpoint, I think that's a desirable thing for a community to have. You know, it's a nice way to develop things. So, other questions of or comments from the commission, Commissioner Potts?
One last question. It sounds like you intend to own and operate this for the foreseeable future. Are you operating other clinics as well?
I've done 14 medical clinics in the Twin Cities area. I've just completed for the Ridgeview Medical Center out in Waconia. We've completed the 212 Medical Center on Interstate 212 and 41. It's a 170,000-foot building with an emergency department on the main level. And this week it celebrates its one-year anniversary, and it's a very successful project. And we've done 7 additional medical buildings for Ridgeview Medical Center. And with my prior company, I've done 5 buildings on Fairview campuses. So I know and enjoy medical, know how to work with the clinics, and are very enthused about doing a project at this location, and feel very comfortable that it'll be successful. Thank you.
Mr. Platter?
I just have a question on that parking, or excuse me, the Skyway. Have you talked to Fairview about sharing parking somehow here? You know, assuming that, you know, may have overlap. I mean, it seems like in this area you're just building out and everyone builds their own ramp. Well, how does the synergy work for everything? Are they connected? Can we somehow cross-park versus, you know, at the end of the day, does that save somebody else parking, you know, building more parking? So I'd like to hear your thoughts if there's any chance of that, and if you've approached anything with that piece.
To answer your question, yes. I have met with Rob Grumman, Vice President at Fairview. Their ramp has the potential to go up 3 more floors. They would like to retain that capacity for expansion at the hospital. Most patients don't like to walk more than about 150 to 200 feet to get inside the building. These are not urban environments, so we do need to keep that parking close to the medical building. It would be nice to work something out with Fairview, however, that is a tax-exempt ramp. Our ramp is a for-profit ownership, so the county, city, and state will get the luxury of real estate taxes on that facility. So if you can come up with an idea, we're open for it, but we have not been able to beat the system. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Yes. Thank you.
Commissioner Staunton?
Looking just at the neighboring property, there's your property, and then there's another property, and then the Cornelia apartment complex. And I got to say, I can't remember what is located right in between. Can you help me? Do you recall what's in between? And I guess what I'm driving at, was there any discussions about trying to acquire that site as part of this development?
Commissioner Stanton, there's a 2-story, 15,000-foot building that's owned by 4 individual attorneys to the west. It's a 1.07-acre site. We do not have plans to purchase or acquire that particular property. The site that's before you today is the one that we're working on. We feel 60,000 feet is a good-sized building. It's not too large. It's not too small. It's a very expensive site, and we're focusing just on this particular property. Should it come available in the future, certainly we'd be open to looking at it, but for the next 2 years, this is the site we're putting our efforts on.
So in kind of planning this site and thinking about the structure that you're proposing in this sketch plan, tell us a little bit about the, you know, why this much square footage, size, bulk, et cetera?
The most efficient size for medical office is about 14,000 to 18,000 square feet per floor. Most of the clinics in our area are 2,000 to 6,000 square feet. Most of these clinics like a certain number of windows within their overall clinic area. So our building is designed about 40 feet from the outside glass to the corridor. If we're doing a 2,000-foot clinic, it's almost square. It's 50 by 40 roughly. So these buildings end up with 3 or 4 clinics on each floor. As we go up with 4 floors, that's how I get to, say, 6 to 15 clinics within the overall building. You end up with 1 or 2 specialists within the building that cover each of the medical areas, and they inter-refer among themselves. So 40 to 60 to 80,000 foot clinics work really well. 60,000 feet is kind of the magic number. 63 France, the curvilinear building, 69,000 feet, 6 floors, and I can name other clinics within the area that are that size that work very well. There are other clinics that are bigger or buildings that are bigger that work well also, but for this particular site, based on what we have to pay for the land and for the success of the building, 60,000 feet is very important for us. Thank you.
I mean, what I'm driving at is my concern is that it feels like 10 pounds of potatoes in a 5-pound sack. I mean, it's a big building in an area, almost every single bulk regulation is exceeded. And I recognize it's a PUD, but it's also in this area of potential change. And, I've been on the commission long enough to have been here when the Twin City Medical came through, the Twin City Orthopedics came through. And we had a big discussion at that point about, was it exceeding kind of the capacity of the area, particularly from a transportation perspective. There was, right before that came through, there was a big discussion in the comprehensive plan and the updating of the comprehensive plan about height and density, and there was a thought that we couldn't be more dense than X without, more study and more evaluation of what that was going to do. So while I agree with the chair with respect to the appropriateness of medical use in this area, I think that makes sense. I think there's some synergies with the others that are here. I have real concerns about, how much you got going on in the space that you got it going on. And I appreciate the 60,000 square foot magic number. I just wonder if it really is possible to make it happen on this size site.
Well, those are very good concerns. It gets down to a business decision and a perspective from a planning point of view. If I was to take this building down to the Abbott Northwestern campus, it looks small. I mean, the ramps down there are 10, 12 stories tall, parking ramps. The key to the success of these projects is being close to the hospital, and there aren't that many sites left adjacent to Fairview Southdale Hospital. Excuse me. So when we do get the opportunity, we've worked with the Milovitz family for 3 years to be able to purchase the property. So when we look for sites next to major arteries like France Avenue, next to the regional hospital, I'd like to go 8 stories on the property, but 4 works really well. The parking is reasonable for patients to get in. We've got access on each of our parking levels directly into the medical building, so it's a nice short walk for patients. It's a fabulous site. I hate to see it underutilized with a 2 or 3 story building. We've tried to create a special, unique building at a very special, unique corner.
Mr. Carpenter?
I'm going to actually reiterate to some extent what Commissioner Staunton just said. And I'll just phrase it a little differently to suggest that maybe it would be worthwhile to take a look at what alternatives you do have for downsizing it a little bit, because we do have a fairly egregious difference in terms of what the the zoning provides for and what you're looking to do here. The PUD is obviously a way to accommodate that, but it's stretching the boundaries, at least to some extent. And so all I'm going to suggest is that if there's a way to try to look at exploring opportunities to downsize that a little bit, I know it's not the easiest thing to do, and you're obviously indicating it's a very undesirable thing to do, but I'll phrase it a little differently. Maybe it's still functionally possible to do.
Thank you, Commissioner Carpenter. We will take that under advisement. From our perspective, the floor area ratio for regional medical is 1:1. We have about 57,000 square feet of land. So we're just slightly over that FAR number. We were hoping that with the environmental enhancements and with the special architecture, the building really is a jewel. I know we tend to focus on the parking ramp, but as people go north and south on France Avenue, it is going to be a significant and interesting architectural building. We do have 15 feet from the curb line of France Avenue to the building. It'll be a significant pedestrian walkway, and hopefully will spur other development on France Avenue to follow that kind of a special pedestrian walkway. So we're hoping you'll take some of those above and beyond code items that we are putting on the building with special consideration, but we will look at your suggestions.
Just to follow up on that, and I'm guessing I know the answer to this given the location of the site, but I'm assuming that there's no way to go underground for any of the parking?
In fact, we are.
You are?
Yes, yes. There's 26 stalls completely underground in the building itself, and then one level of parking ramp does go down from grade.
And can you go down further than that?
We're approaching water table, so
no. Okay, so you are partially down there.
Yeah, we're pushing limits there.
Okay.
Commissioner Schroeder?
I don't have questions so much as comments, and I'll focus them on two areas. One is the landscape, and the second is the desire that you stated to create a pedestrian environment. Let's start with the landscape. While the pictures that were shown of kind of a streetscaped environment are intriguing, I don't know that they could actually ever exist on France Avenue, especially in the limited space you have available. You have 15 feet. You're showing the sidewalk that I'm assuming is probably 8 feet wide. It leaves you 7 feet next to probably one of the most heavily salted environments you'll find in the county, with snow storage on top of all that stuff. And it will be and then you're putting in a building that you've indicated has reflective glass, and it's going to be extremely difficult to get plants to grow in that environment. You also are highlighting the fact that on the south side and on the west side you'd be preserving trees that are 10-foot setback from the building, but you're dropping your floor of your garage down one level, and you'll compromise the roots of ash trees, which probably aren't that great of a tree to start with anyway, especially with the insect problems we have with ash now. So I think some of the assumptions you're making about how well the landscape will be screened and then the long-term viability of landscape becomes important as well. When we've approved other projects in the past, one of the conditions of approval has been that the landscape that's indicated, both existing and planned, that's shown on the landscape plan, has to remain in place forever. And I've noted to our city planner that there are projects that have not fulfilled that requirement, and we'll have to be going back and replacing trees in extremely difficult situations. I don't want to see a France Avenue landscape treated as an annual planting bed. I would like to actually see trees that could get the size that you were showing, or larger, and I don't know how that will happen. You could take greater extremes in plantings with other kinds of planting environments below the sidewalks that will help the trees grow. You can do things with irrigation to flush salts from the planting zones, from the root zones every spring. It's just an incredibly difficult environment to get plants to grow in. If you drive up and down France Avenue, I think you'll see that where the city or developers have tried to do things along France Avenue, it's difficult. It's not impossible, but it's difficult. And I guess as you go through that exercise, I think it's important to recognize the environment you have all the way around your building is limiting in terms of creating landscape. The second thing, and I think for me what becomes more important, is how your ideas about creating a pedestrian-oriented landscape actually, or pedestrian-oriented environment actually work. We have in our ordinances, actually in the PCD zoning ordinance, not for this district, but in PCD 3, an ability to create some relief for setbacks for those projects to create an enhanced pedestrian environment, active pedestrian environment. And when this has come up before, there's always been some interpretation of what it means to create an active environment. And I just want to run through several points that I would note about what that means. First of all, you have a very prominent front door, and you've noted in your narrative that you'll have other doors leading into retail. I think the key factor in creating an active pedestrian environment is the ability to create doors, not windows. Your windows are actually transparent, which doesn't really help the active pedestrian environment. They're reflective in your narrative. They need to be transparent. But the presence of doors along that street is probably more important than having a really great single door in terms of creating a pedestrian environment. If you don't have retail spaces and you don't have doors, we haven't achieved a pedestrian environment regardless of what the windows look like or what the landscape looks like. The other thing that happens is just the basic configuration of space. If we have a 15-foot space from the curb to the front of the building, then we go up 55th Street. It's not a hospitable space for a pedestrian at all, especially given that you've got, I don't know how many lanes of traffic going across France Avenue. The basic proportions of space are wrong, and then you've taken a portion of that space and you've filled it with benches. So now we don't even have a full, potentially 8-foot wide sidewalk, and if you have doors, they're swinging out into the pedestrian space from the retail spaces. So I think you really have to think hard about what the pedestrian environment is going to be, because I don't know that you've achieved it in the drawings that I'm seeing in front of me. The other thing is that we can focus an awful lot on the pedestrian environment along France Avenue, but I'd also be concerned about the pedestrian environment that's being created along 65th, where we have smaller setbacks, and there you're asking pedestrians to walk past a parking ramp. We have a parking ramp on a prominent corner in our community, which I think we all remember when that was approved and how bad that was, that it was not a good idea. And I don't think we like to see parking ramps that are close to sidewalks. We don't even like to see them close to streets. Sometimes we don't have the ability to push that back further. But again, we have a 40-foot or so building now with no activity happening, and we have a sidewalk going essentially right next to it. So I think that when you come back, if you do decide to come back, I think this idea of fleshing out what it means to create an active pedestrian environment on two sides of your property, not just two sides of your building, of the primary building, becomes important. And I think that the last thing I would say is that if you look even at the image that's up on the screen right now, this is what France Avenue looks like today. And if you look at the kinds of development that we see going on along France Avenue, most of that won't change. We saw one last time we met where we had a small building that was pulled up close to the street. And I think we were able to become generally comfortable with the scale of that building up close to France Avenue. This building at 55 feet tall up next to France Avenue seems really out of character with the kind of France Avenue we have today. And I think with the kind of France Avenue we're going to see for a very long time between Crosstown and 494. Thank you.
Commissioner Forrest.
I agree with a lot of what's been said already. I guess one thing I've noticed on 65th Street, it's really, right now it even feels like a tunnel when you drive through there because of the parking ramp that's on the north side and probably with the trees and the other construction on the south side. And I'm concerned about that really turning into a tunnel. And it would also limit any light coming into that street whatsoever. The trees, again, the ash trees I'm concerned about. I would like to see an agreement as part of the rezoning that would not only require the replacement of any trees that are lost, but also that a certain size is designated and that there be variety in the species that are chosen. I'm also concerned about the width of the sidewalk, the lack of depth variation along that walk. I mean, there isn't, it's an attractive building as it is if it were on a downtown block or if it were in the middle of a cornfield. But I am concerned about its bulk right next to the road as well. I would like to also see that we don't end up with a building facing France Avenue with signs all over it with the names of the medical groups and the retail that's inside. I'd like signs to be kept below the awnings or something that's much more reasonable and doesn't turn it into just an advertising billboard. just looking at my list here. There was a lot of concern during the comp plan process by our residents about height, building height. And this is coming in here, and that's one of the variance type issues that I am concerned about, because there are some guarantees put out there that we were going to be very sensitive to that concern. And I can see there's some potential pushback, because it's not only the size and the shape of the building, but the height of the building and its location are, can contribute to that problem. Also, this area, not only is it congested, it's an entry into a medical campus type area, which I agree. I like that idea. I lived in Rochester for a number of years, and it seemed they cohabitate well with residential areas. There wasn't a lot of problem, at least that was a few years back, with the flow of the traffic and things like that. However, this is not only right at an entrance off of a freeway, very proximate to that, but also it's kind of a gateway into the medical campus. So I think we need to be really sensitive to how we use this space. And I think the use is great. I think there are a lot of good things about your project. But I think we need to really work hard together on this to come up with a project that everybody's happy with, because it's a sensitive location. And looking at my little notes. I agree with Commissioner Potts regarding, I'd like to know, it would be nice to see on the plans, actually, what's the location of the closest transit stops, just so that we'd have that information available. And also then it would be easier for us to assess, where's the pedestrian traffic going to go. Not saying that should have been on your plan this time, but just in general, it'd be nice to have that information when these things come forward. And I think most of the rest of it has been addressed. But I really am concerned about height, the fact that it's a gateway, and that we don't pollute it with signs.
Let me just add a comment. I agree about the signs. I do not agree at all about the height concern. When you're proposing a building that's lower than the building across the street, it's lower than the building that's west of you, it's lower than the buildings across the street, and it's lower than the buildings next door to the south. And I just, this issue of height comes up all the time, and I just think it's a red herring, particularly in this area. It's just, I'm not persuaded at all that that's a concern. I do agree about the signage. I agree about, I appreciate Commissioner Schroeder's comments about the landscaping and that type of thing. On balance, I think it's an attractive proposal, and I appreciate that, we're trying to develop a medical campus here, and I understand your concerns about the size of the building, and I'm sensitive to the fact that there are, a development has to make money, or it's not going to be built at all. So we have to make compromises here, too, to encourage the kinds of development that do make economic sense and are an enhancement to the community. Other comments? Mr. Fisher?
A lot has been said, and I'm not going to repeat all of that, but I would just, I think it's important when we look at the mass of the building, maybe exceeding the current standards in the traditional zoning district that's there right now. I can see us exceeding some of that for the same reasons I was okay with the Twin Cities Orthopedic Clinic, in that it is that adjacency to the freeway interchanges that makes that work better. In other words, we're not driving that into the community. However, I agree completely with what Commissioner Schroeder was talking about, this idea that a building pushing itself up to the street is creating good pedestrian environments is a misnomer, and that I think there's some subtlety there and some design nuances that probably need to be worked on. I'm not saying I'm opposed to, I mean, the concept's right, and the direction is good, but it's kind of the details in that. And I do get a little bit concerned just because it's so close to the freeway interchange, the traffic's still not really behaving very well at that point. So it's going pretty fast. And so, again, the details of that between the building and the street are going to be pretty important in terms of making people feel comfortable walking on the pedestrian environment you're trying to create.
Mr. Potts?
I guess to add just a couple of points onto the ones just stated. I think if there's any site that can handle this use, this FAR, I think that this is one that can do it. And I think that you've come into us making a statement that you're trying to use design well to convince us to provide the variances that this project will need. And I think that's the right approach as well. And you've gotten some good feedback relative to several aspects of this. And I guess the only one I'd reiterate is the reflective windows. I'm not as comfortable with, along with the landscape, the pedestrian friendliness, the parking and all that. And I guess the only other concern I have is to look hard at the traffic study results that come back. I can see easy access and a decent amount of traffic volume being handled by cars that are eastbound on 65th coming in from Valley View. Much more difficult coming in from France and having to turn left in.
Other comments? Commissioner Forrest?
Well, if we end up with parking ramps on both sides of that street, we might want to look at possibility or if there is a possibility of putting a center turn lane into 65th Street in some way. And I don't know exactly where that, how much space we would still need for that. I'm not that familiar with that street.
Other comments? Well, we've had some good discussion here. We've made reference to some of the concerns that have been expressed already by your neighbors to the south. We hope you will take those into consideration and take into consideration the thoughts and concerns and good comments and encouragements that have been expressed here. We thank you for your time. It's certainly an interesting proposal, and I guess as far as the Commission's concerned, the next steps are up to you. Thank you.
Chair Crable?
Yes.
If I could just make a comment. We're still relatively early in this whole sketch plan review process ourselves, and I just can't help but comment that, so here's, a developer, and you're coming in and trying to get our comments, and we've given you comments, but I think the direction is clearly circular in terms of, that's the way it works, right? You can see that there's a variety of opinions and comments, and hopefully you've been able to discern some level of what people are thinking, even though it's not going in the same direction.
Mr. Chairman, Commission members, thank you very much. It is a healthy process. We've taken copious notes this evening. We will be back. We're very encouraged on the project. And in our next presentation, we'll have addressed a majority, if not all, of these comments. And we hopefully will be back to see you in April. So we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Michaels. Okay, where's my agenda? The next item, and thank you also members from Point of France who came this evening to hear this proposal. Correspondence and petitions, you did receive the council connection. I note that the city council did not agree with our recommendation on the subdivision on Oak Lawn, which is exactly what the city council is entitled to do. Pardon me? I guess we know who to pay attention to then, don't we? I noted. One other thing that you received in your packet tonight is an attendance sheet, which will help us keep track of our attendance requirements here. I think that's a good thing. You've been asked, when you came to your seats this evening, there was a public contact information sheet. Please fill those out and make sure that they get to Jackie. Other chair and commission member comments. Commissioner Forrest.
I'd like to thank the organizers of the Living Streets workshop last week. I found that really well-run and very, very interesting, and a number of us were there, and it was worthwhile time spent.
Thank you for that comment. Other comments? Commissioner Schroeder?
Mr. Chair, I just want to direct a question to Director Teague. Last time when we got together, we were talking about landscaping and the death of landscaping in certain parking lots at projects in town. And I want to know if there's a formal process to go through and make you aware of that, or whether it's just sending you an email or letting you know. We mentioned it to the developer tonight. I just want to know what kind of a process we ought to be following, or other citizens can be following, to make certain that the developers or owners of properties are following through on their commitments.
Yeah, you can just send me an email. That's fine. Or residents or anybody that sees a dead tree somewhere and it's part of a somewhat recent development. Staff can pursue that, and we are in the midst of pursuing the ones that you had mentioned earlier.
Commission member comments? I want to thank Commissioner Staunton again for all the work on the Grandview study. It's just really impressive to see what's going on with that. Our next Planning Commission meeting is March 14th. I have to be out of town that evening, so I'll look to our Vice Chairman.
This time I'll try and actually.
Yes, please do. The annual meeting for the Planning Commission is set for March 28th. We'll take a look at the any restatements to the bylaws, election of officers, that type of thing. So I know that's an exciting meeting for everybody. So,
Chair Grable?
Yeah.
I'm just looking at our attendance sheet, and I'm getting worried about you.
Well, I understand.
I can tell you what happens if you don't show up.
I appreciate that concern. As we go through the year, it will work out. Trust me. Staff comments. Carrie?
None this evening, thank you.
All right. All right. With that, then, if there's no other business to come before the meeting, I don't know who's supposed to do it, but we'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved,
So,
Mr. Chair.
moved and seconded to adjourn. Are there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.